Today on the 1012 podcast, we're talking Utah football and why the Utes should or should not be the favorite in the Big 12 this season with Joseph from Utah Utes Football Digest, plus the latest on Texas Tech softball and their new head coach hire with Eric Lopez. And we're 1 week away from the Corner Four officially joining the Big 12 Conference.
Jewelry can say many things on your wedding day. As a wedding band, it can say, "This is a forever symbol of our forever love." As a gift to your wedding party, it can say, "Thanks for standing up there with us." Blue Nile can help you find the piece that says it all and says it beautifully, with expert guidance and a wide assortment of jewelry of the highest quality at the best price. Go to BlueNile.com and experience the convenience of shopping Blue Nile, the original online jeweler since 1999. That's BlueNile.com.
Welcome to the 1012, the podcast that covers all 14 teams in the Big 12 Conference, plus Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah. We are the flagship show, the 1012 Network. Find every show on the network at 1012network.com. And of course, we are partners with Sports Social, Europe's biggest sports podcast network. I'm your host, Phillip. Thank you for joining us this week. That is the last time I'm going to have to say 14 teams plus Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah in the intro of this show, because the next time an episode drops, this will be a 16-team conference that includes Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. Think about that for a second. We are essentially 1 week away from officially saying sayonara to OU in Texas and officially welcoming the Corner Four into the Big 12. We are 1 week away from that happening. Oh, that's huge. It's exciting. Ooh, I got a little tingly thinking about that. I've got to make sure I get the intro right next week. Oh, that'll be fun to say. Speaking of Utah, we are talking a lot about Utah today. Joseph, the host of the Utah Utes Football Digest on YouTube, is going to join us. Here's the primary thought process here. Why will and won't Utah win the Big 12 this season, their first in the conference? It's a good show. He does a really good job. He is all things Utah football. Great interview. Plus, our good friend Eric Lopez is back already. Texas Tech has a new softball head coach, pulling off the biggest shocker of the coaching carousel in college softball, pulling Gerry Glasco away from Louisiana to become the new head coach at Texas Tech. Oh, man. It's a big one. Plus, we got a little more to talk about, including Houston. I do want to talk about Houston just for a second. As you all probably are aware at this point, Houston is searching for a new athletic director after Chris Perez was fired this week. University president releasing a statement, not the athletic department, the university president released a statement stating that he was no longer the athletic director. Y'all, this was a shock and a surprise. He had been at an alumni event not 24 hours prior to the news. He hired the women's tennis coach not 3 weeks before this happened. He, of course, made the football hire of Willie Fritz. He is on the outs, and the deputy AD is off to become the new AD at Fresno State. Big changes coming at Houston, and I want to promote the Scott and Holman podcast. That is our Houston show. I don't think anyone does a better job from a podcasting standpoint covering Houston than Sam, Dustin, and Bobby do. They have been killing it the last couple of weeks. They had an emergency podcast about the change in leadership there at Houston. They had really smart, great thoughts about that. I listened to that podcast while I was mowing this weekend. Absolutely fantastic stuff. They have an interview with the new women's tennis coach, Katarina Adamovic. And they're the ones who broke the softball story about the allegations against head coach Kristen Vesely, which, based off things I have heard, I can't confirm, but can say I feel like had at least a small part to play in the decision to make a change at the top of Houston athletics. So go check out everything they're doing. I get you're not a Houston fan. Why do I care? They just do a really good job. And at least the AD podcast, they do a fantastic job about talking about Houston like three guys that love Houston but are willing to be critical of the thing that they love because they love it and they want it to be good. So go check out the Scott and Holman podcast. You can go to 1012network.com, TEN12, the word network.com. You can find the link there. Go check that out. They have done a absolutely fantastic job. They always do a good job, but they have killed it these past couple weeks with the episodes they've been dropping between softball, the AD, the new women's tennis coach hiring. Go check out the work they do. They absolutely deserve it. A week away from 4 new schools joining us. I know I need to talk about all the uniform stuff. I made the comment on Twitter about Iowa State's new white and black uniforms that they don't feel very Iowa State. And look, I know Iowa State fans get very defensive about uniform chatter because everyone makes fun of them for the black uniforms, and black is the school color. Your school colors are red and gold, red and yellow, whatever. That's not black. I know back in 1950s, doesn't matter. That's not what you're known for. I think the problem I have, and they're clean. They are some clean uniforms. They are really nice uniforms. My problem is not with Iowa State. My problem is with this new Nike template, which is essentially what it is, because you see the new stuff for Baylor, you see the new stuff for Iowa State, you see the new stuff that is coming out for Nike, and North Texas had them come out. It's copy paste, change color, copy paste, change color, copy paste. It's not great. It was fine when a few schools had the shoulder stripes. It's getting to be a bit much. The TCU ones are bad. They're boring. They are boring. They're dull. They're dull. TCU used to have uniforms with personality. And look, I didn't love the incorporation of the blood red all the time in TCU stuff. Some of them I was like, ugh. But at least they had personality and character. The new ones are just, ugh. Okay, cool. They're boring. They're not fun and exciting. And I get you're a fan base, you're a fan of your team, you're going to be jazzed for new uniforms and you're going to love it. That's fine. Cool. I get it. No problem. But Iowa State, incorporate your school colors more. Let's just figure out fun ways to do that. And Jamie Pollard, who has blocked us on Twitter, because of course he has. He blocks everybody. Throwbacks are cool, man. Throwback logos are cool. So is selling beer in stadiums. Oh, feels like a good point to bring up. If you want to look cool this season, then you need to go to Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com. And y'all, Big 8 week was last week. Big 8 Roadshow was last week. And they killed it. They absolutely did. The last drop they had for Big 8 College Roadshow was the championship tees. Kansas 1968 Big 8 Conference Football Champ t-shirt is so good. The best one, by far, hands down, no argument whatsoever, is the Iowa State men's basketball 1996 champ shirt. It is so good. It's so good. So is the Colorado 1982 ski champ shirt. But then so is the OSU 1994 Big 8 wrestling champs t-shirt. Y'all, the champ shirt releases were incredible. I like the Cola t-shirts a lot. I like the Ringer t-shirts a lot. They dropped great stuff. I am getting that green Big 8 t-shirt. It's a classic green Big 8 t-shirt. It's awesome. It's awesome. Go to charliehustle.com and check all of the new gear out from Big 8. If you're a Big 8 fan, if you're a fan of Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Colorado, Nebraska, Iowa State, Kansas State, Missouri, go now. Go and check it out. I know there's no Nebraska fans listening to this, and I don't know how many OU fans are listening still, but go check it out. They have done an incredible drop, and they've got new bomber jackets coming out this week, and new stuff all summer long. There's 4 new schools joining in a week. Colorado's on the site. 3 schools aren't. Wonder if they might rectify that problem shortly, soon. Absolutely incredible stuff. So go to charliehustle.com. Check it all out. If you find something that's not on sale, use the promo code 1012. 15. TEN1215 and get 15% off your order. Throw a bunch of stuff in there. Throw in that promo code and start stocking up, getting yourself ready for the college football season. It'll be here sooner than you realize. And they have great stuff to stock your collection. And they love the Big 12. They're doing Big 8. Who else is putting out Big 8, a vintage Big 8 collection this summer? Nobody. Who's going to put out Big 12 school bomber jackets this summer? Nobody. Who's going to probably have some brand new things for 3 corner schools that aren't on our site yet? Nobody. So go to charliehustle.com. Support them because not just because they support us, but they support the Big 12, and they make incredibly comfortable, cool stuff. charliehustle.com, promo code 101215, TEN1215 for 15% off all non-sale items. Charlie Hustle, vintage made fresh. Follow us on Twitter at 1012 Network. Follow us on Instagram and Threads at 1012pod. Do me a favor, please. If you listen to the show on the regular and you are on social media and you tweeted us and you like us, find the tweet with the show link or just share an episode. If there's an episode that's dropped the past couple weeks, either this one or Ari Temkin or anything that you've liked, would you share it with a friend or tweet it out? Just drop the link, be like, hey, I liked this thing they said, or I liked this about this show, and share the show. Okay? Because we are going to do our rankings live week in July. And I want to get some buzz built for that. And I want to get people listening to the show more. And I know this is the downtime, but this is the time to start finding some new audiences. And if you're a Utah fan, welcome. I'm thrilled to have you. We're going to talk Utah and Colorado and Arizona State because those schools are in the Big 12 now. So leave us a rating and review, 5 stars, please. It really does help. Like it's an easy thing for you to do. It really helps the show out. And for all of you who are loyal listeners who comment on Twitter, who react to things, who DM us, email us 1012podcast@gmail.com. I'm happy to talk with anybody about anything you want to chat about. I get some random stuff in the DMs, but I'm happy to talk about it. Happy to. Love the Big 12. Love the Big 12 here. All right, let's talk some Utah football. Okay? Y'all, they are more like us than you realize. Utah fans, we're more like you, us other Big 12 fans, than you realize. It's time to start coming together and all of us realizing that Colorado is actually the real villain of the season this year. And of course, stick around. We've got some great softball chat after our talk with Joseph. Great show. Love this one. Don't forget to check out Scott and Holman podcast and every other 1012 Network podcast, 1012network.com. Let's get to it.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
I don't know if we're officially going to call them the villains of the Big 12 this year. Colorado making a very strong case for that for many, many reasons. But I just, because of all, or at least as far as I saw, the conversation between Big 12 fans and Utah fans, and it seems like there's some Big 12 fans coming around on Utah and coming to the realization that I've had for some time that Utah fans are, and the program from a football standpoint, are a lot more like most Big 12 schools and fan bases than either side actually realizes, and one day we'll find this, that it was time to have a little Utah conversation, because Utah at this point in the offseason, and I know it's still June, is the just about consensus favorite nationally to be the preseason number 1 team in the Big 12 once that poll is released. Media days, of course, coming up soon, just a few weeks out. So I wanted to take a little bit of a look at Utah football because I find it an interesting team, and I think them, of course, being one of the 4 new programs, it's certainly a team and a program we should do a little bit more to familiarize ourselves with, because I think that's going to be important in trying to actually figure out what the Big 12 might look like in year 1 of a 16-team conference with 4 brand new teams and 4 teams who were basically in their sophomore years. So very excited to have with us today. And I think you guys are going to like him. I do. I really do. Joseph of the Utah Football Digest. Joseph, man, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me on. Yep, Joseph with the Utah Utes Football Digest. Super happy to be here. Super happy to be talking with you.
You have a YouTube show that is pretty much just Utah football. That's your area of focus, and that's great. How did you get started with this show for everyone?
Yeah, so I am originally from Las Vegas, and I moved to Utah 9 years ago, 8-9 years ago, and I've always loved college football. I've had a strong passion for it, and kind of what happened was I wound up in a spot where I didn't have a college football team. I don't know. I have a pro team. I've been a hardcore pro football fan since I was like 13, and I'm a Jets fan, which a lot of you guys probably know. It's not a great time, not a fun one. You could think about it. When I was 13, I'm 31 now. It's literally, I got 2 years of greatness and then just terrible pro football from the Jets. But then, so I moved to Utah. UNLV has been prolifically probably the worst D1 football team outside of the past year or two in my lifetime. I think they had 2, maybe 3 seasons over 500 since I've been around. So pretty wild. And so I wanted to move into Utah, and I decided I wanted to be a Utah fan. I wanted to be about it. I wanted to commit. And it kind of led to me thinking, hey, I don't really do things half-assed, right? I want to go all in, and I want to, embrace it. And so I wound up shortly after I became a Utah fan, I made a podcast and just went with it. And I believe it is currently, the source for Utah Utes football. There's other Utah channels out there, but we don't cover gymnastics and basketball and softball. We're all about Utah Utes football. And if there's a video on my channel, you have 100% chance that that's what it's about.
Very cool. Very cool. Look, I don't care how you become a fan of any school. The term bandwagon fan gets thrown around as some sort of like insult, which I always think is a bit silly. Of like, why would you not want regular people to be a fan of your school and support it? Anyways, so it's very cool. Very excited. I've watched quite a few of the videos on your show, so I'm excited to have you here with us today to talk a little Utah football.
Well, real quick, I want to clear something up.
Yeah.
I definitely wasn't a bandwagon fan because the season I decided to jump on board officially was the COVID year, which was a rough year for Utah. So I felt like that was fair. So it worked out.
I mean, one bad year in the midst of you got to sit there that year one and be like, have I made a bad choice as a Chiefs fan? Was this a mistake?
Yep.
Utah had what I would call an okay and not great last year. A lot of expectations after back-to-back Pac-12 championships, and then Utah, of course, Cam Rising gets hurt. That's a big part of what happened last year. But a disappointing season that somewhat ironically comes not just the last year of the Pac-12, but the first time in probably more than a decade where we really felt like the Pac-12 was a really good football conference last year, with Oregon and Washington being what they were, and Washington getting to the national championship game, and just like the conference felt really good. Like it did seem like, where's this been forever? Maybe if you had been this good for the last 5, 6, 7 years, the conference wouldn't have. Maybe not have fallen apart, but leadership being what it is what it is. And so, of course, Utah has a down year there. And so I think a lot of casual people were like, oh, see, Utah's not actually that good. The conference has a good year and Utah's not any good. Because, why would we pay attention to any sort of details or intangibles? Let's just look at the record and say what we want to say. So help me and everyone else kind of understand what happened to Utah this past season.
Yeah, it was a wild year. So much emotion. And I think Utah fans, I think, believe it or not, I know it's going to sound weird to a lot of Big 12 fans. I almost feel like at the end of the day, Utah fans actually, depending on the fans, some fans are just wild. But I I actually think a lot of Utah fans should be a little more optimistic than they are. And I know that might make people, think I'm crazy, but you got to understand Utah fans were going into this last year thinking that Utah was going to be nasty good, right? All the same things you're hearing Utah fans say right now was the exact same thing we were heading into last year saying, and really, really felt it last year. I mean, you think about it, we're coming off back-to-back Pac-12 championships, back-to-back Rose Bowls. And one of them, we go 48-45 against Ohio State with CJ Stroud. The other one, we wind up losing pretty bad to Penn State. But if you watch the game, you knew that Cam Rising got hurt in the middle of the game, and that's when they pulled away. But up until then, Penn State looked pretty damn good. Don't get me wrong. They looked good. But up until then, we were competing. But what happened to Utah last year? So as I mentioned, Cam Rising gets hurt in the Rose Bowl. Brant Kuithe was hurt significantly earlier in the season. And the understanding was that as we headed into that 2023 year, that the two of them would be back. And I really want to point that out. I'm sure everybody knows how big of a deal it is to not have your starting quarterback, right? There's not many teams in college football or any level of football that if they lose, especially a star player like a difference maker in Cam's situation, that they would still be a good team. And on top of that, I want people to understand who Brant Kuithe is. I've heard a lot of Brant Keith, which tells me pretty clearly they didn't know who he was. And that's okay. I get it. It's hard. It's other conferences. No harm, no foul. Up until I think it's game 4 when Brant Kuithe gets injured in 2022. So this was a long time ago. Brant Kuithe gets injured in 2022. Up until that happened, Dalton Kincaid, who happened to be a first-round pick, was tight end 2 for Utah. He was not talked about the way he wound up being talked about. I knew he was good. A lot of hardcore Utah fans knew he was really good. But let me be clear, the hype was all around Brant Kuithe. And I know I'm being super long-winded here. I just want to set this stage. And then we head into 2023, and Cam Rising and Brant Kuithe do not play a snap, right? So we go into this year thinking we're going to get Cam back, thinking we're going to get Brant back, and we get neither one of them back at all the entire year. I have a suspicion that, they both kind of agreed maybe at a certain point during the season that, hey, we're both going to sit the year out and come back next year and go for a ride. But hey, is what it is. So we lose those two. But then on top of that, the injuries got worse after that. Jaquindon Jackson, who's right now playing for Arkansas. I don't know if you're familiar with him, Phil, but he is a really good player. When he was not in last year, he had a real bad injury bug last year too, kind of like a in for one game, out for another, just in and out all the time. But he is an animal. Arkansas is getting one of the best running backs in the country. I was really sad to see him go, but he was kind of in and out. And when he was in, he was such the life force of our team. But when he was out, you could feel it. And then on top of that, we go into 2023 thinking Bryson Barnes looks great. He had come in a bunch of spot starts for Cam, looked decent in the Ohio State Rose Bowl in 2021, and then had shown up a couple times looking good. And he comes out in the Florida game, doesn't look great, but doesn't look terrible. And you can cut me off, Phil, if I'm going too long on this topic. Feel free to cut me off. But it's Bryson Barnes that looked pretty decent, but we never really saw it on any significant sample size. But you felt decent because behind him was Nate Johnson, 4-star quarterback from Florida. And you think, okay, break glass scenario. We go from Bryson Barnes to Nate Johnson. And Nate Johnson can't be that bad. One concerning sign as we headed into 2023 that didn't feel concerning at the time, but looking back is a big concern, is you get this news article. It was sometime before the season started. I don't know the exact date. It was after spring ball. Brandon Rose, I'm not sure if you know who that is, Phil, but Brandon Rose, he's one of our backup quarterbacks, young quarterback. There's an article that comes out that says Brandon Rose and there was like rumors before it. They said like Brandon Rose looks to be winning the QB2 spot. Like it looked like he was going to be the guy behind Cam, which kind of came out of nowhere. You were like, what in the world? Brandon Rose. It felt clearly like it was Cam, Bryson, and then Nate. Anyways, it's a long explanation, but it was a little bit of pretext because he gets injured, but they said he was going to be QB2. And then you've got Bryson and Nate who, you know, early in the season, you were just kind of watching and hoping they'd figure it out, shake the rust off. But I don't know if you kept up with it, Phil. Utah had horrific quarterback play last year. And like I mentioned, I'm a Jets fan. I've seen some terrible quarterback play. Seriously. And this was probably up there with the worst I've ever seen. And, you know, everything's relative, but it was just so rough. And then Mekhi Bernard also gets injured game one, who's going to be he's not, I don't think he's quite at the Jaquindon Jackson level of talent, but a much more versatile tool and a very good, like a guy you expect probably, you know, 6 to 8 touchdowns from and maybe 1,000 all-purpose yards, right? Like a very good player. And so it was just, I hope that kind of accumulates everything where Utah's defense is what held us in games. It really did. It was the only thing keeping us alive last year. It was a very stressful year as a Utah fan. And I think when you factor in all the things I just mentioned, this was not like, I think a lot of people are not understanding just how bad Utah got hit with these injuries and with all the problems we had. It really was, there were some game-changing factors. And just to reiterate, Cam and Brant Keithy, who are the best players, bar none, on this offense, did not play a snap last year.
I mean, all of that makes sense. And that's kind of the vibe I got from Utah paying attention last year with, you know, knowing that eventually they were going to be in the Big 12 was like, it just feels like this is a team that isn't as good as we thought they would be, but not having Cam Rising, like that alone is a big deal. Like not having Cam Rising is going to be a problem. And if you don't have a backup that's ready to go, I mean, you're going to have some of the games that Utah ran into. I think what's really disappointing is you see them go out and beat Florida to open the season. This is a big, exciting thing. And
beat USC too. We almost beat Washington. It was weird.
Win at Baylor. Well, but Baylor's bad. And then, you know, they beat UCLA, but then UCLA's fine. And so what stinks is that you look at them and then the 4 losses that they suffered in the regular season, bowl game aside. I mean, there were some bad losses in there. Getting destroyed by Oregon. I mean, the Washington game was close. And
that was college game day.
Washington played so many close games last year, losing like they did at Arizona, close wins against Colorado at the end of the season. You got the win at USC. USC gave a lot of teams wins last year.
Well, one thing, just to correct the record, Arizona, our defensive stars that have been keeping us in games all year were out for that game. And I'm not going to make any assumptions. Everyone's saying like it was real injuries, but you know, it was one of those situations where it was like, hey, they're just randomly out the last game of the year. And then almost everyone that was out declared for the draft. No harm on them. I'm just saying like I think they were like, hey, it's not worth us risking our draft stock. We're declaring we're going to sit this one out.
Which is fair. Okay, so all of that I want to help set the stage for. It was an 8-5 season. 8-4 in the regular season, lost Northwestern in the Las Vegas. Well, whatever. Bowl games only help. We only talk about bowl games if they help your argument, not if they don't.
Yeah.
A still solid season, but a disappointing one. So let's talk about this year. Like I said early on, it feels like the kind of national consensus preseason 1 and 2 in the Big 12 are Utah and Kansas State. Even though we keep having conversations about how wide open the Big 12 is going to be, in part because Oklahoma and Texas are gone, and so it feels like a far more even conference. And also, we've seen the Big 12 since the Big 12 title game came back. We've seen whoever's preseason number 2 doesn't make it to the title game. It's someone picked somewhere between like 3 and 7. Yeah. I think when Baylor did it in 2021, they were picked like preseason 8th. So like that is the insanity and the wackiness of the Big 12 is you just don't know. And so, but it still feels like Utah is kind of coming in as the favorite this year. And I've had some talks with some different people. I talked to Ralph Amsden a lot about Utah and the Pac-12, and he talks about how tough Utah is. And so what I want you to start with is help me understand why Utah should be the favorite in the Big 12. Why do you think Utah not only should be the favorite in the Big 12? If you do, if you're like, no, they shouldn't, then you can tell me not. But why do you think they should? And why do you think, what is it about Utah this year that would be the reason that they win the Big 12?
I absolutely will tell you that. Can I go off on one quick tangent? And this is more of just a question for you, Phil, if you don't mind me asking. Why is no one acting like Oklahoma State should be in that mix? I know there's like, it feels like it's Utah's 1A, Kansas State's 1B, something like that. And then Oklahoma State's clear like 2 or 3 or whatever, right? The weird thing to me is a ton of veteran offensive linemen that have looked good, right? And then Ollie Gordon. I think my real question is, after doing my deep dive in quarterback breakdown, Alan Bowman's not exactly great. I think I feel very confident saying that. I think that's pretty damn generous. Yeah, is that what it is? Is it like they just really have that little faith in him and that's why they're lower? Because I don't get it. Like Ollie Gordon's back, this beast offensive line. How do you not rank them higher?
Well, Alan Bowman, I think, is part of it. And he kind of got worse as the season went on and more was kind of put on him as teams started to focus in on Ollie. The defense was fine last year. It had a lot of growing pains being with a first-year defensive coordinator, trying a new scheme. And they won a lot of close games. If you really go back and look, like, there are games that OSU did have a big lead in and then kind of blew. Like, you had the weird start to the season where you lose at home, you get blown out by South Alabama. You win a close game against Kansas State, which was big. You get the close win over Oklahoma. You get blasted on the road by UCF. You've got to come back on the road at Houston. You've got to come back at home against BYU. Like, it felt like they were a team playing on the edge of, like, could have lost a lot of the games that they won, and it would have been a very, very different season. And so histories and trends tell us teams that have that kind of, air quotes, luck tend to have the reversal the following year. The argument I would make is if you actually go and look at Mike Gundy's record, the man is over 500 in one score in close games, and by a lot. I'm not going to go search through my notes and find it. I have it somewhere. Mike Gundy, outside of like a couple of seasons, is really, really good in one score games. He has an incredible, like, he is the antithesis of Matt Campbell of being fantastic. And that is not something you tend to want to give a team credit for, even if there is a history of it. And so you take Alan Bowman, you take the record last year, and you take the fact that, look, the schedule's not easy this year. You have to have Utah and Kansas State in back-to-back weeks to start Big 12 play, and then West Virginia. That is a brutal start to Big 12 play for Oklahoma State. Having to play both Utah and Kansas State, there's only like 3 teams that have to use both of them, and OSU is one of them. And so I think there's just a lot of things where the schedule looks a little bit easier for Utah. The schedule looks a little bit easier for Kansas State. I am not as high on Kansas State as everybody else is. I love Avery Johnson a lot. It's still going to be his first year starting. They still lost a lot off that offensive line and on the offensive side of the ball. I understand, like, the entire defense is coming back and it's huge. But I'm still not as as high on Kansas. They're more in the mix for me than I think they are for everybody else. Like, I am less, there should be a dominant 1 and 2 and everyone else is in a mix behind them, and more like there is a mix of like 6 teams, and Utah and Kansas State are in that mix. Yeah.
Well, and you know what else too? Like you mentioned earlier, it's a big mix. Like, you go through the schedule for a lot of teams. Like, I think you mentioned it earlier, Oklahoma State looks like they have a harder schedule, but do we really know yet? Just like you mentioned, every year with the Big 12, that 3 through 10, it's random. You have no idea who's going to be. You kind of can tell. I feel like it's pretty clear Arizona State is probably bad and BYU's probably bad, but a lot of people are counting out Houston, and I think Donovan Smith is a pretty damn good quarterback, and a lot of people are counting out Baylor, and I think DeQuan Finn's a pretty like the idea that you're just checking that box like they're gonna suck. It's like, I don't know, dude. You look at those 2 QBs; they're pretty good QBs. They're not like trash players.
No, any given Saturday or Friday or Thursday. Like, it's the Big 12. And it is. You have to, you're going to have to win your close games. I mean, those are the teams that get to Arlington, are the teams that can win one-score games every year. And so, and then of course they got blasted by Texas in the Big 12. It's just like I get why people are down on OSU heading into the season. Like I get it, I really do.
Yeah.
So after the win over OU in Bedlam, the final Bedlam, what's the most impressive thing they did the rest of the way? You got blasted by UCF. You had a come from behind win at Houston, double overtime come from behind win against BYU. You got blasted by Texas in the Big 12 title game. You beat a A&M team that basically was on like second, third, fourth stringers at that point. Like, I get it. I do. I completely understand. I'm not gonna sit here and argue with anyone that like, no, OSU should be the favorite. Like, I don't know.
Well, and you know what, Arizona and Colorado. Like, my thing is, I don't expect Colorado to be that good, which is all we're talking about. It. Like, if Shedeur Sanders does start going off and winning them games, would you be that surprised? I wouldn't expect it. But QB play is a difference maker, dude. And It seems like they've invested a ton in trying to make this team better. That's what I'm saying, where it's like, and Arizona, they've lost a lot of talent, but the talent they didn't lose is the talent you can't lose. And so it's kind of like if they came out looking significantly better than people are making them out to be, I have Noah Fafita as my second best quarterback in the Big 12. I think he's really good. So, and Shedeur's number 3. This is a good group.
I know we're going off topic here a little bit. Like,
yeah.
would it shock you anybody if like TCU had a bounce back year? I think
Josh Hoover looks pretty dang good too, dude.
I think what UCF has done in the transfer portal, bringing in KJ Jefferson, I get into arguments with people sometimes like, KJ was awful last year. I'm like, yeah, because he had to play for Dan Enos, who's not going to run an offense that has anything to do with KJ Jefferson. Let's ignore the 2 years prior when he was really good at Arkansas. And now he's going into a system, even with Gus Malzahn as OC, who perfectly fits what makes KJ Jefferson a really good quarterback. Oh, by the way, they have a ridiculously deep running back group, and like UCF is like become my dark horse. Hey, Kansas, if somehow Jaden Daniels magically stays healthy for an entire season, like we got Kansas, who should be still pretty good in the mix here. Like, I'm not on the like Texas Tech is going to contend this year, but because I don't know what's going on with the quarterback situation, just how healthy Baron Morton actually is. But like, this is supposed to be, it's year 3. There's all this talent they've been bringing, all these guys, all this depth. Like, now we're supposed to start paying attention to Texas Tech. It's just like the Big 12 is a conference, and I say this all the time. It's a conference about cycles, development cycles. It's not about reloading. There's no teams left that just are so stacked with talent that they just reload. It's all right, we lost that 5-star. We've got 3 more behind him. It's all right that all Big 12 left tackle left. We've got another one ready to go right behind him. That's gone.
Yeah.
And so it's about development cycles. And last year, a lot of the conference was on the bottom end or on the tail end of their development cycle. This year, I think a lot of them are trending towards the top at various, and some more so than others, some at various different position groups, which is why I really, like, if you told me there is a 6-way tie between 3rd and 9th place this year, I would absolutely believe. If you told me that Brett Yarmark had to flip a coin to figure out who is going to, or roll a 6-sided dice to figure out who's going to Arlington because there is a 6-way tie for the championship game, I would not be surprised. I really would not. Yeah. Now, that's not how it typically works. Someone's going to be able to win enough of the close games to get themselves sitting atop the conference standings. And equally, it wouldn't shock me if there's 2 teams in the Big 12 and the 12-team playoff, because you had 2 teams who were able to win those close games, have enough things go their way that they both ended up sitting there at 11-1 or 11-1 and 10-2, and now the 10-2 teams going on, 11-1's not getting left out. So like I like nothing with the Big 12 surprises me anymore. It really doesn't. After Baylor won it in year 2 in 2021, like I'm just done with trying to be surprised for the Big 12.
Well, I think we both agree there's going to be 2 or 3 teams that we think will be in the top half that'll be in the bottom half, and there's going to be 2 or 3 teams that we think are going to be in the bottom half that will be in the top half. Like, and it's
West Virginia was
so
preseason
close.
Picked last place last year.
Yep.
So,
and I would
okay.
even say with West Virginia, like I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm not like, because I don't think it will. I think Garrett Green's legit, but
yeah,
they're one that we're all kind of acting like for sure they're going to be the upper half. It's another example. Like if they were a lower half, like you thought it for sure going into last year, and then they miraculously looked good. It's just like, hey, if your quarterback can't bail you out every other play, you might not be in the upper half. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, and then West Virginia is also the schedule strength going into the season. We thought they had the most difficult schedule in the Big 12, and then they didn't. They had one of the easier ones based off of how teams actually ended up. And so, that's the thing with schedule strength and trying to look like all of this stuff we understand. It's just preseason conversation to fill the void. And we're doing the best we can to try and figure some things out. Once the ball is kicked off in week 1, none of that preseason stuff matters anymore. All that matters is what you do on the field in those games because everything will change so drastically from the Friday before week 1, or I guess week 0, and the following Monday. So it just, not this year because week 1 schedule is so freaking awful. But I'm sorry, don't complain about college football. Just be happy that it's on. You'll take what you get, whatever, even if the duck's been boiled.
Well, you know how it goes. You don't really know till week 5 or 6. Once a couple of conference games have been played. And even then you don't know. You just have trends. You have okay, they have a couple good wins or anyways, you want to talk Utah now?
Let's talk Utah. It's fun. Yeah. Okay.
Now, y'all know I love McDonald's for a quick meal, especially if I'm out and about with the boys and need something to eat. I like food, and y'all know I like saving money, too. Did you know that you can save money with deals in the McDonald's app every single day? Yeah, you heard that right. There's a deal every day in the app. So if you are an avid McDonald's goer like me, you'll find the best value for your buck by using the app. One of my favorite things about the app is the ability to order ahead. So let's say I'm on the road, just picked up Axel from school, and know I promised him some McDonald's fries on a Sunday, but don't want to have to wait in that long line. I open up the app and just place my order there. Then I can walk in and pick up my order when it's ready, no wait needed, especially if I time it right. And I love that you can also get a bunch of deals in the app as well. I just logged in and can get a free Big Mac with a minimum purchase of $1. But check it every day because the deals are always changing. Plus, make sure to share your birthday so McDonald's can celebrate with you with something special. Dream drivers save money with the McDonald's app. Nope, you must opt into rewards.
Joseph, why is Utah going to win the Big 12?
Yeah, so a lot of what I mentioned earlier, what we're getting back, just right out the gate, returning production. Sports Illustrated listed the University of Utah ranked within 20 teams in the country regarding returning production. Entering 2024, they are the 16th ranked team out of 134 teams, with 72% of their overall statistical production from the 2023 season returning. And I want to just, when I say that, also be aware Cam Rising and Brant Keithy didn't play a snap in 2023. So I don't know if they're counting that. I would imagine they're not. That they're not adjusting for that, which means that Utah is it's an older team now. There's some spots that are young, but we have a group that has been together for a while, some transfers coming in to kind of be the icing on the cake. And it really is a group that is poised for a run. And I know everyone thinks Utah fans are super confident, but I'm telling you guys, if you knew how we felt going into last year, considering everything, and there's a lot of confidence, but it's like, hey, it's right there again. And if you watch the spring game, and a spring game doesn't mean a ton, but Cam Rising looked damn good in that spring game. He looked really good. And guess who he looked good connecting with? Dorian Singer. So I'll just kind of break it down. I'll just break down some players to watch for Utah and why we win the Big 12. I think one player is Cam Rising that's either going to make or break us the Big 12. And I'll touch on why he can make us win, and then I'll touch later on why he could make us lose. If Cam, he is a playmaker. I don't know how much you've watched Cam, Phil, because last year he didn't play a snap, and before that you probably weren't paying it. Yeah, so he's legit.
I've watched some.
Yeah.
I am aware that Cam Rising is a really good quarterback. I'm not.
Cool.
I'm not going to play the Utah fans.
Yeah.
No. Cam Rising is a very good quarterback. Cam Rising is, if not is easily like top 3 quarterbacks in the Big 12 coming into the season as far as what we project.
Well, and the Big 12 is a heck of a quarterback conference too. So I think that's saying something.
So
I think it's deep.
It is this year. Like, it was not
Really
great
deep.
last year.
It's like seven legit, maybe 8. Very, and it depends how much you want to count them. I mean, we could be talking 10. Like, no offense, I'm sure you won't love this. I don't have Avery Johnson in my top 10, and I'm sure as a Kansas State fan, I think he is number 10. He's either number 10 or number 11. I probably don't love that, but I'm just saying I'm not even including him. And if he has the type of follow-up season to last year that a lot of people think he's going to have, he's in that group too. There's a ton of good quarterbacks. Anyways, but returning production. So there's the Utah players returning that I just mentioned that didn't play in 2023. And don't forget, we went 8-4 in 2023. And on top of that, I'm telling you guys, we had no quarterback play. And then we just brought in transfer after transfer that's a stud. I don't know if everyone knows who Dorian Singer is. I mentioned him earlier. He at Arizona, he put up over 1,200 yards 2 years ago. And then he winds up transferring to USC. And he just winds up in this super crowded wide receiver room and doesn't get his touches and doesn't get the reps he deserves. And I'm telling you, in 2022, after that season ended, I was so hoping we would get Dorian Singer because he visited us and he didn't wind up coming here. And when I saw that he committed to us this, 2024 cycle, I was so excited. This kid is a beast. And I heard someone say it when I was watching a podcast earlier. I think it was Uncle Lou, if you watch that one. And he was talking about how Dorian Singer is probably the most talented receiver Utah's had in a very long time. Like, we don't get these super talented receivers, and Dorian Singer is going to come in and make an impact. And he already looked like he had the chemistry with Cam. On top of that, Brant Kuithe coming back, like we talked about. But even more at the tight end position, we got Carson Ryan. Are you familiar with him at all, Phil? He's from UCLA. Not a ton of yards, but one of the highest PFF graded tight ends year in and year out in the West. Very good tight end. And I don't remember the exact number, but in his snap sample size, he's like top 10. He's very talented, and he's our tight end too. And then on tight end 3, we have Landon King, who transferred from Auburn last year and kind of started to come into his own at the end of last year. Looked very good. Offensive line's pretty young, but very talented. Running back, we get Mekhi Bernard back. We have Jalen Glover, who took a ton of snaps last year and kind of came into his own a little bit. Still needs to take that next step, but a good running back room with multiple 4-stars behind those two. Mekhi Bernard wasn't a 4-star, but plays like a 4-star. Jalen Glover's a 4-star. Mike Mitchell, a beast. My channel is a lot about recruiting and a lot about watching tape and breaking down tape. Mike Mitchell's easily in the top 3 tape I've seen, and I can't wait to see him hit the field. Last year was like true redshirt year. We have another 4-star in Dijon Stanley, another 4-star in John Randall Jr., a very deep running back room. So the odds that someone doesn't kind of break out of that room is very low. So we went through basically every position on offense, and Utah's pretty loaded. Other receivers I didn't mention, Damian Alford from Syracuse had over 500 yards last year. We also have, what's his name? Who's the other guy? Oh, Money Parks. He was a big-time receiver for Cam in the year we went to the Penn State Rose Bowl. He had that huge little dump off or like a slant that went for a touchdown against USC in the conference championship. Really good player. So 3 really good receivers. But then behind them, we have Munir McClain, who was one of the highest yards per route run receiver in the country last year. And it wasn't a giant sample size, but it wasn't tiny either. He was like top 30, top 40 in the country. And it wasn't a tiny sample size. We also have Micah Pittman, who's been in college football forever. He was at Florida State. He was at Oregon, had some injury issues last year. We have Tayshaun Lyons from Washington, 4-star prospect coming into his second year of college football. And on top of that, we got a couple 4-star freshmen and a couple guys that are hitting their second year that looked good coming out of high school. This is I'm telling you, Utah, it feels like almost like a joke or something that we went into this year just saying, hey, there is no way we do not look good at receiver. We just put tons of resources over the past 2 years and just triple loaded up heading into this year. So defense has a bunch of returning talent too. A bunch of our D line is super talented. And I'd say the spot where Utah's linebackers are really good. Lander Barton, Karine Reed, really good linebacker room. If you guys don't know, Lander Barton and Karine Reed are both NFL prospects. Like Lander Barton's like a possibly day one type of prospect, and Karine Reed has a ceiling of probably like day two. These are two very good players. And Lander Barton has like Jackson Barton, and I forget the other brother's name, but he's like NFL pedigree too, and looked awesome last year. It was funny, he wasn't first team preseason All Big 12 for linebacker. He was like fourth, and I was shocked. I think he's going to make people regret that. He's pretty damn good. And then linebacker is a really good spot for us, but I think corner could be better. Corner, we have Zamiah Vaughn, who I believe should be up there as one of the best cornerbacks in the Big 12. And if he hits his ceiling, I'm an optimistic guy, but I believe he's got best cornerback in the country type of ability if he gets there. He had some steps back last year, but got it going towards the end of the year. And if he comes out looking awesome, looking ready to go, it'll be big for us. And that cornerback 2 spot's kind of up for grabs, but we have a cornerback that transferred from Georgia Tech named Keenan Johnson. He was playing on the outside at cornerback in the ACC multiple years and graded out at, I believe, like a 75 or a 76 last year for PFF, which is at outside corner. That's a really, really good grade. So I think he's going to be a really good cornerback too. And if someone else can beat him out for that cornerback 2 position, more power to him. They must be damn good. And then at slot, we have a bunch of different really good players. We have Tao Johnson, who was starting all last year at either slot corner, nickel corner, whatever you want to call it, or free safety. And then we also have Smith Snowden, who projects as a very good slot corner. This will be his second year on the team, and he was actually the Utah Football Player of the Year, another 4-star guy. So tons of depth, tons of positions where there's very maybe light gray question marks, but very high optimism with what happens for the team.
I noticed you said 4-star a lot. Like, I know Utah does a good job in recruiting, and does a good job on the West Coast. One of the big reasons, and one of the things I've seen Utah fans so mad about the Pac-12 falling apart is they've done such a good job being in the Pac-12. It has boosted their recruiting profile significantly, and the concern about what that means no longer playing all those West Coast teams on an annual basis now, that'll impact recruiting. So it'll be obviously something to keep an eye on moving forward, but it has been, like, Utah has done a really good job. Utah and TCU, interestingly to me, like, TCU has been the 3rd best recruiting team in the Big 12 for a while since they joined the conference. There's Utah TCU similarities are interesting as far as this Big 12. Again, I just keep finding similarities between Utah and other Big 12 schools.
No, it is definitely the conference we were meant to be in.
It is. I get the Pac-12 and the love for the Pac, and being sad that it's gone and the benefits of it and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. There's so much more coming. Okay. So that's why Utah could win, because there's a ton of talent there. There really is. And of course, Cam Rising is Cam Rising is a huge part of that. You mentioned the returning production. You mentioned Bill Connolly's numbers, 16th in the country in returning production, 26th in offensive returning production, 28th nationally in returning defense. Iowa State, number 2 in the country, by the way. That's a team we didn't talk about when we were going through all those Big 12 schools with Rocco Becht and all that they're bringing back, which is number 2 offense and number 5 defense. Granted, Colorado's 15th in returning production. Well, that was a while ago. I know they've had a bunch of guys leave, so that's probably not still accurate. And of course, returning production is only as good as the
that's, I don't know if that's a good thing for Colorado. That might be a negative.
No, I think they've had some more guys leave, and they've had some other talented players join. Anywho, for Utah, I think there's a lot of Big 12 fans, based off of comments by Utah fans, who would love to see Utah come in the year 1 and fall on their flat on their face and fail.
For sure.
Right? So why would that? What in your mind?
What does that look like?
Why is Utah not winning the Pac-12? And I mean, you can give me your, like, because the whole team is hurt. But I mean, honestly, like, What are some reasons Utah's not going to win the Big 12, other than just the fact that the Big 12 is insane?
Yeah, so I think you're right in that it really is going to be a tough conference. I do think a lot of people are rewriting the story on the Pac-12. Like maybe there would be 2 games each year where you felt very confident you were going to win. But I think if people really take a step back and look at the Pac-12 going into every year, very similar to what we were just talking about with the Big 12, where it's like, yeah, maybe there's 1, maybe 2, like Arizona State and BYU, where you feel super confident they're going to suck, right? At least I do. But it's a situation, the same with the Pac-12. You'd have that. There'd be a couple, and then there'd be that jumble of like, hey, yeah, like I'm not sure what's going to happen. They have a bunch of 4-star talent on those teams. Let's see what happens. Just like Arizona last year. Who would have guessed that they would just start racking up wins after their quarterback gets injured? Anyways, but Utah, why do we not win the Big 12? I think the number one reason we don't win the Big 12, I think injuries are worth at least noting. I know you said if everyone gets injured, but just realistically, we are having 2 huge key players that could be injury prone, or at least at injury risk, in Brant and Cam, where you could be a little concerned that it has a higher chance of happening. If one of those 2 goes down, it's a big deal. And I don't want to understate the value of Brant because he is extremely valuable. He's probably will win us a game at some point this year. Like if he's in there, like there will be a game where he goes off, and if we didn't have him, we probably don't win that game. Kind of like Dalton Kincaid, right? Like he won us a couple games in that 2022 year. But I do think if Brant goes down, it's not going to lose us the season. If Cam goes down, it's a really big deal. If Cam goes down, that's a nightmare. We just witnessed that, and we don't want to see it again. I could see that. But I'd say more than that is what I mentioned earlier. Cam is a dog, and he's a playmaker. But where we have seen some struggles, and every quarterback does struggle with this, is Cam has had his worst performances have been on the road. And it's not that he's bad on the road, but there were a couple games like Oregon in 2022 where you wanted more. There were just a couple bad plays where I don't know if he got nervous or hesitated or what, but we only put up 17 points against Oregon, super lackluster first half. The good thing for us is we're great at home. Like one of the best teams in the country at home. If you ever get a chance, Phil, to come to Utah and check out Rice-Eccles Stadium, please do. It is a special environment. But away, we don't have our home field advantage, and I can see that if Cam has a couple bad games away, that could be a problem. And I think the other thing, I mentioned it on our reasons for winning, that we have a very talented but young offensive line. I think a lot of people are checking that offensive line box going into this year. And I'm super critical of the offensive line. It's my passion of what I love for Utah to be great at, but it's also what I hate watching when it's not good, right? I think a lot of people are acting like last year our offensive line was this awesome product. It wasn't. We had I think it was a 5th and 7th round pick or 6th and 7th round pick, but those were clearly the 2 best offensive linemen on that offensive line. And they were drafted, but they're not coming back. And our offensive line didn't look good overall. And we're having young guys have to step up and make plays. The good thing for us is it is a group of like 8 to 10 guys that all could be starters. I have a little cheat sheet here from when I did my roster breakdown. I'll just run through them, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that are listed as for sure starters or potential starters, and only 2 of them are for sure starters, right? The other 6 are all like, hey, let's see how that shakes up. So it's going to take a couple games to get them reacquainted. I don't know if you've looked at Utah's schedule. The good news is we get 3 games out the gate where we should not lose any of those. So if we do struggle a bit and take a few games to get the ball rolling. Our schedule's set up perfectly to do that. But then right after those 3, hey, we're going to Oklahoma State. You better be ready to go. It's going to be a tough game. But I think that's a big thing too. Does this offensive line just not take that next step, which I think that's not really going to be what we're going to see. We're not going to see a great offensive line or a bad offensive line. I think we're going to see one of those roller coasters of an offensive line, which probably every team feels like their offensive line's a roller coaster every game, where it's like, hey, how our offensive line does this game will impact greatly how we look. And we'll have some games where they suck, some games where they're great. Again, they're very young, very talented, but very young. And then finally, our safety room. This is another group that no one's really talking about. This is something Utah fans do that does annoy me a little bit, and I'll sympathize with the other Big 12 fans a little, is they'll act like, and I think I know this from being a Jets fan, that free agent pickups that are not big time free agents are not checked boxes. Like, it's like, hey, hopefully it works out, but it's not done. It's kind of the same thing where it's like, hey, we don't know what we have at this position, similar to offensive line, where safety is like, yeah, we have some talent. We have some guys that we hear good things about, but very few snaps for this group. And the guys that do have a good amount of snaps, it's not great snaps. They're not terrible, but it's like, hey, we're replacing a early 3rd round pick. I believe Cole Bishop was like the 5th pick in the 3rd round, very early 3rd round pick, and a 4th round pick in Sione Vaki. So like the idea that like that's not going to be hard to replace is crazy. That was an elite safety room. I mean, think about the last time you had a team get 2 safeties picked up in the first 4 rounds. That's a really good group. And so the idea that we're just going to replace them right away and it won't be a problem is probably not true. Just hopefully we figure out what we're going to do there. A lot of people, I mentioned Tao Johnson earlier, where maybe he'll push back to free safety if those guys don't do well. And then Smith Snowden, the Gatorade Player of the Year, can go play slot corner. But you see what I'm talking about here. There are some questions with Utah where, hey, if we don't figure this out. And I think the other kind of big thing that has a lot of variability is all the transfer portal talent we brought in, especially at receiver. Now, when people enter the transfer portal, they're entering for a reason, right? None of these guys are transferring to Ohio State or transferring to Alabama. I'm not saying we're a step down from where they're from, but I'm saying they're not there for a reason, right? They're like, they came to Utah, and we have to hope that this works out. I do think we took enough like quality, good to great shots at that dartboard that we should have the talent we need. But history has shown us that Utah's not amazing at developing receivers. So the lack of receiver play, not talent, but I could see that happening. I don't think it will happen, but so I'd say critical things, Cam during away games. Could we lose 1 or 2 from Cam getting shaky in an away game? I'm just recapping it. Then 2, the young offensive line and some slightly unproven offensive linemen. Can this offensive line mesh quick enough to hit their stride by the time we get to that Oklahoma State game? 3, the safety room. It's a very unproven room. I know a lot of Utah fans are going to hear that and disagree with me, but that's all right. And then 4, the transfer portal. How quickly can those guys really get going? Again, I said Cam had a really good connection with Dorian Singer, but I think those are the 4 things when we look back at this season. And honestly, I'm not mentioning it, but there were other really good players from this defense that aren't going to be there. Lavani Demouni got injured. The good thing is the linebacker room's still really good. He was the worst of the 3 linebackers, and he's an animal. And then, we lost Jonah Ellis to the draft as well. He was a 3rd round pick. And we have a good edge room, deep edge room. But hey, someone needs to step up and get it done. I think we have the guys to do it, but we're talking about NFL day 2 talent here. You don't just replace them like that. So
I'll comment on 2 of your points on the transfer portal. I've heard it said, and so I kind of hammer this point of like 50% return rate on the transfer portal players is a successful transfer portal class.
Yep.
Like immediate impact guys, 50% is a successful Right. Because you just never know. Are they going to fit the system? Are they going to fit there with the program?
Culture.
Are they fit the culture? Are they going to get the figure things out? Like, you just don't know. So if you get a 50% hit rate on a transfer portal class, like if you think every transfer portal guy coming in is immediately going to make your team better, that is fool's gold nonsense.
Yep.
Just sorry, especially when you get to like maybe at a lower level. When you get to a Power 5 level, y'all, it's not realistic. The road schedule, I do think this is one of those things where, look, we don't know what the schedule is going to be. We don't know. There's going to be teams who are better than we think.
Yeah.
However, the road schedule for Utah is pretty good.
Yeah.
Utah State, at Utah State, at Oklahoma State, at Arizona State, at Houston, at Colorado, and at UCF. Utah State, it should be a win. You've got 2 road games at teams that Utah is very familiar with in Arizona State and Colorado.
Yeah.
A Houston team with a whole new coaching staff. It is interesting that by far the 2 most difficult road games bookend the Big 12 schedule. They open at Oklahoma State, and then they end the season at UCF all the way out in Florida to end the year. Now, it'll be nice because it'll be warm there. It won't be cold like it will be in Utah, but having to go to a UCF team that on a Friday night, on a short week after playing Iowa State, it's at home. It's going to be like, it's a very interesting schedule the way it sets.
I don't think it was coincidence that Utah plays UCF at UCF the last game of the season, right? I think I've got to imagine that there's going to be a lot of eyes on that game where it's like, hey, Utah is probably, I think if you and I are on the same page here, there's a really good chance that game is winning you're in, right? Like, or something along those lines, like winning you're into the conference championship game,
or you need to win and hope someone wins. There's something a realistic chance. I know people think I'm crazy. There's a real chance UCF and Utah are both playing to potentially.
I don't disagree with you. They're a lot
Arlington.
better than people are making them out to be.
That roster's there's some questions on defense, and Gus has to call the offense. I get all that. Again, it's the Big 12. Like, you just don't know who's going to pop and what, and it would not shock me if UCF Utah, which, again, if you told me 5 years ago that Utah UCF was going to be a conference game, I might have just laughed and walked away. I think the idea that they're in a conference that's the one. That's the one where I'm just like, I'm sorry, what? Like, West Virginia, Arizona State's weird. Colorado, Cincinnati is weird. But Utah UCF is I don't know why, is the weirdest. Like, these 2 teams are in a conference and they're going to be playing each other in a conference game on a Black Friday. Like, okay, sure. Okay, crazy person. Whatever you say. Joseph, this was awesome. You have done a fantastic job. Everybody should go and check out your show. It is a YouTube show, the Utah Utes Football Digest, if you want to learn more about Utah. I know there's plenty of Big 12 fans who are like, I don't care. I don't want to know anything about Utah. I know they're just for my opinion based off of the 8 most vocal Twitter accounts that just make every Big 12 fan mad. Pig bus. So
someone came out with a list. It was a Utah fan that was like the tier of Utah accounts, and they had me in C. And I was like, first off, you don't even follow me. And then I was like, I looked at it. I was like, one, you don't even follow me. I've never even talked to you. And it's like, all right. I mean, I don't know. But I would say, just follow up with what you were saying. If you guys like Utah content and you are sick of the super cocky Utah fans, am I very confident in Utah? And I'm very optimistic. Like, I am a homer at the end of the day. But if you want in-game, real, no punches pulled, I will call out position groups. I will pull up PFF grades, call out bad games, whether we win or lose. And you want to hear someone actually be pretty critical of Utah, whether they're your team or not, I'm your guy. That's why people either love my channel or hate my channel. That's it right there.
I think you do a great job. I'm pleased for you to have joined us today and taught us a little bit more about Utah. I'm looking forward to them being in the conference here in just about a week. Yep. Just about a week now. Very exciting. Very exciting. So Joseph, again, everybody go check out Utah Utes Football Digest on YouTube. It is not an audio format, so if you're just a podcast person, understand you can go complain to Joseph. You can find Utah Utes Football Digest on Twitter as well. Joseph, buddy, we'll have you back on again soon, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Phil.
The softball season may be over, but just like every sport, that doesn't mean that things aren't happening. So, of course, when there's big news to cover, and there's a few things that we need to talk about today in relation to Big 12 softball, especially at Texas Tech, where they have a new head coach. That means we're bringing on our good friend, Eric Lopez of In the Circle, who joined us throughout the season this year. Eric, welcome back, bud.
Welcome back. That was a quick off season, wasn't it?
You got like what, 2 weeks off from this?
Sure.
This show?
Yeah. If that, right? Yeah, probably. But there is no such thing as an off season. But people always say to me, why do you do softball podcasts during the non-college season? I'm like, because there's always something going on, and no different. This week's a great example of that.
Oh, coaching moves, transfer portal. There's plenty to talk about. There's plenty going on. Heck, now you could talk about the fact that Oklahoma City is going to hold all of the Olympic softball events when the Olympics come to LA in 2028. So that's really big. There's
a lot of jokes there. Plenty of material there to be used. But yes, Oklahoma City now the home for the Olympics and softball. I actually agree with the decision. It's the only facility that could host a major softball event. California does not have a facility that could hold more than a couple thousand people. So totally from a logistics standpoint, really from an Olympics, it was either going to be this or they probably would have had to play like at Dodger Stadium and you would have had to convert it into a half softball stadium. In the past Olympics, you have baseball and softball share a baseball stadium. That's how softball's played. So at least here you get your own softball facility. But it is weird that the Olympic softball athletes will literally be nowhere near where the Olympic activities are going on.
Hey, I know it's good for Oklahoma City. So
it is good for them.
They've got that in the canoe slalom.
This also should, like, for people that keep trying to bring up, like, hey, we should move the World Series. This is pretty much like that's hard to make that case when the Olympics feels like Oklahoma City's the best place for it.
It's good enough for the Olympics, but it's not good enough for the women's college.
Exactly.
This is going to be an unfair advantage to the U.S., right? Because it's going to be in Oklahoma City, so it'll be close to.
I would hope so. I mean, the difference is that's kind of what we want, though. I mean, we kind of want that, but it is what it is.
All right, we got to talk about Texas Tech. They have made a new hire, and it is it's the biggest hire of this offseason. Craig Snyder left the head coaching position at Texas Tech to take an assistant position at Tennessee, where he will also be able to coach with his new wife, who had been an assistant at Penn State. That seems like it was probably part of what played in his decision to leave and go take that assistant gig. Now, Texas Tech has gone and done something that has shocked the college softball world in hiring Gerry Glasco away from Louisiana, where he has been one of the best coaches in college softball. Forget one of the best coaches in mid-major. One of the best coaches in college softball in making the postseason every single year in 7 seasons, 2020 aside, because there was no postseason. I believe he won or tied for number 1 seed at the Sun Belt every year he was there. He won the tournament like 4 times. They hosted a regional this year. They made it to Supers last year. I mean, he has had a ton of success there in what is a historically good softball program at Louisiana. But for Texas Tech and AD Kirby Hocutt to be able to pry him away from Louisiana and bring him to Lubbock, which is a place that is not as known for softball success as Louisiana, certainly hasn't had the success in recent years that Louisiana has had, I think is a huge, huge thing, not just for Texas Tech, but for the Big 12 as a whole.
100% agree. It's the number one hire of the offseason, with all due respect to all the other hires in the sport. And I'm a Craig Snyder guy. I'm a fan, but you could argue this is almost an upgrade, which is mind-blowing. And credit to Texas Tech for pulling this off. Because I was following the Texas Tech search, and there was one name in particular that kept getting brought up up until Wednesday, when all of a sudden I get a message on Wednesday while I'm recording an interview for the In the Circle podcast, and Gerry's name comes up. I'm like, what? Like, nobody, and it's ironic because Gerry's name always comes up when like big jobs open, like in the SEC, where he was an assistant coach at Texas A&M and Georgia. He'd been to the World Series as an assistant. every time a marquee job opens, his name seems to be floated. And I know for a fact he's turned down jobs before. And Louisiana is regarded as the marquee non-power program softball job. It's kind of like the Gonzaga of softball, for those that follow men's basketball. So I think the fact that not only is he bolting Louisiana, I'm not surprised he's bolting for Louisiana, that he's leaving. What I am surprised is where the destination ended up being is Texas Tech. And that caught everybody off guard. And credit to everybody involved, because they kept this hush up until Wednesday. Like, nobody saw this coming. Normally in softball, Phillip, if a coach is in the mix for a job, you hear about it like multiple days, maybe a week in advance before it's official. There was no whiff, no sniff at all that Gerry Glasco was in the mix for Texas Tech. So credit to everybody for keeping this hush-hush as long as they did up until it started leaking on Wednesday, and then the Advocate confirmed it early Thursday morning, and then Texas Tech made the announcement shortly after. Credit to Kirby Holcutt and Texas Tech. They worked fast on this one. I mean, they got that one out, and, what a big hire now in Gerry Glasco.
Let's play the devil's advocate side of this for just a minute, because it is a shock that Texas Tech has pulled Gerry Glasco away from Louisiana. That is, I mean, I'd make a football comp, but I can't think of one off the top of my head at the moment. I mean, it would be like, no, it didn't even work. I can't even use Texas Tech in another sport as a reference point. It is a very surprising hire for Texas Tech to be the school that got him. What is it that you think lured him from Louisiana, specifically to Texas Tech? You said he's turned down jobs before, and obviously his name gets attached to every SEC opening that comes up every year because he's been in the SEC. He's there in Louisiana. He's had his name attached to, I would call them, bigger jobs in college softball. What is it about Texas Tech that this was the job he finally decided to leave Louisiana for?
So that is the question that everybody in softball is asking right now. My phone has been nonstop since then. And I haven't talked to Gerry directly, but I have talked to people around. One thing I will say, I know for a fact, one of the issues, I think, is name, image, and likeness support. Louisiana is not a power conference school. Do they have enough NIL money to keep your players or bring in players? You might know more about this, but apparently Texas Tech has a very good name, image, likeness deal going on, especially at softball even. That attracted Gerry. That is something he was looking for. I had heard rumors during the season that that for the right place, he would jump to a power conference school. I think if you look at his last 2 years, he had an incredible 2-year run here at Louisiana the last 2 years. The year before this past year, got shafted out of hosting. He did win a regional in Baton Rouge, got to the Supers. This year, dominant year again. I mean, they've been scheduling top 5 schedules and have done everything you would want. They got a 13 seed, was knocked off by Baylor. In other words, you wonder now in today's landscape, is Louisiana capped out? It used to be Louisiana was a powerhouse World Series contender. I think those days are over, and I know Cajun fans are going to like to hear that, but that's with the landscape that's going, with the power conferences, all the conference realignment, you're probably going to better off being in a power conference school that has the resources to contend with what's coming, with certainly with sharing revenue with athletes, which is coming, NIL. So I think when you look at all that, I think Gerry, maybe, my guess is, Gerry looked at Louisiana as like, I've done all I can do here. And then Texas Tech, when that opened up, which was kind of a fluky deal because Craig Snyder, bolted only because of an opportunity with Tennessee, would come with his wife to be on the same staff, join the Vols program. That opens up. Gerry's thinking, I'm sure, and his representatives are thinking, hey, this is the Big 12, which could be, right, to me, will be still the number 2 conference in the sport. I got a better chance there than I do as far as going deep into postseason and getting talent and keeping talent than I do at Louisiana with the way the landscape's going in college athletics.
Well, and you look at the Big 12 with Oklahoma and Texas leaving. We've talked about this, but outside of Oklahoma State, Arizona, and I would say Baylor, it feels like the conference is kind of wide open. Like Utah has had successful years up and down. Arizona State obviously has a history of success. They're still trying to get things going under their head coach. And you know, Iowa State's been in the postseason, Kansas up and down. So it does feel like there is a lot of opportunity in the Big 12 with Oklahoma and Texas leaving, where that conference is the most wide open it's been in a long time. And so, no, Texas Tech isn't a perennial power, but if you're looking for opportunity and you find a place that you believe has the resources to provide you that, going into a Big 12 school right now is a good idea.
Agreed. And let's expand on the Texas Tech front. Ted Tedlock, when he was hired, people thought, well, Texas Tech baseball? Really? Like, you know, look what he's turned Texas Tech program into in baseball. They've been successful. They've been to Omaha. People thought Texas Tech couldn't win in basketball. Chris Beard got him into literally an instant replay away from a national title. So who says that you can't win at Texas Tech? They have been to regionals in the situation in softball. I do wonder, Phillip, too, with the Snyder situation, did that almost kind of awaken some people at Texas Tech, some donors saying, hey, let's make sure that doesn't happen again. Let's go for a big name to keep this coach here for a while and give that coach whatever they want, because this is going to be the fourth head coach they've gone through for various reasons. They've had some off-field issues, things like that they've had to make changes. But I do wonder if some people are like, hey, let's step in here and kind of just lock this up. But we don't want this to be a revolving door, and let's get the best guy possible or best person, and Gerry certainly fits that. I got to believe when we get details here and they do a press conference about this, I got to believe that there's going to be a lot of talk about the support around the softball program from a backing standpoint, from a financial standpoint, from an NIL standpoint. I got to believe that's going to be a theme we're going to hear when they do a press conference.
I believe we'll get a press conference this week. Of course, this episode coming out on Monday. We're recording this interview before that, but this week, at time of you hearing this, probably has an announcement of when that will be already out. So we'll continue to follow that. We'll work to get Coach Glasco on the show probably in the spring.
That is worth it, man. He just be prepared, Phillip. That'll be a whole episode of just him. You don't even have to book anything else around that show, because he will occupy it, and he'll talk. He's got a great backstory. He'll tell you about his background and what he was doing and how he was a hunt. You know, he likes to hunt and things like that. He will tell you a lot about his backstory. It's been a fascinating story. He was a travel ball coach at one point. Didn't even know if he would get into college coaching. Lou Harris-Champer gave him a chance at Georgia. One thing about Texas Tech, he can recruit the state of Texas, because he gets a lot of players to there. So that's a plus for Texas Tech. And he recruits the South, because he has a lot of ties in the South from his SEC days. I think Texas Tech's recruiting will pick up, and I think you'll get a lot of players will be interested in going there, because he's done a great job of getting transfer players since he's been at Louisiana, and I think that'll continue at Texas Tech. So I expect this Texas Tech program to be on the rise here. Probably give them a year or two to get it going.
Well, I mean, look, Snyder was doing a great job of recruiting to that program.
Yes.
So, like, the proof is in the pudding that it can be done. I think Snyder's 2 years kind of gave Texas Tech a taste of, like, we could be good at this again.
Sure.
And so losing him in the way you did to something that was, look, I get it. You don't want to let a head coach hire his wife, no matter how credentialed she is. It can look a little bit funny. And so he found an opportunity to coach with his wife, and that stings for Texas Tech. And it's worse because, obviously, like you mentioned, they've gone through like 4 coaches in the last 6-7 years. And so you don't really want to be in that situation. So finding someone who you feel should be a stabling force is 65 years old. So he's probably not looking to move to another school in the next couple of years. This feels like it probably should be his final stop as far as a head coach goes from softball standpoint.
It will be. Yeah, it will be. And look, you look at what Texas Tech's built around there. You know more about this. You follow the other sports as closely as like Grant McCaslin, great hire, right? Year one, Texas Tech men's basketball. Making the NCAA football, they seem to be on the uptick with their new coach there. From a recruiting standpoint, people seem to like the direction they're going there. So I think they're trying to be an all-sports department there after maybe for a lot of years in the past, maybe they ignored a lot of sports like softball.
A couple other things I want to talk to you about since we have you here. We'll save transfer portal talk for another time because that would take up a whole show in and of itself. Two things, since we're talking about coaches. Houston looking for a new athletic director after he was let go, and also the deputy AD is left for the AD gig at Fresno State. This all comes on the heels of our Houston podcast, the 1012 Network, Scott and Holman podcast, did an episode about some allegations around the Houston softball program. Obviously, Kristen Vesely, who has not had a lot of success, did not have a great year this year. Her contract ends on July 31st this summer, so just over a month away. So Houston without an AD, no deputy AD. There's an AD hunt that's going to be underway. But the allegations regarding her program not being great, we haven't heard anything, or as of late in regards to that, kind of doesn't feel like Houston's going to pick her up for another year after that contract ends on July 31st. That would be my assumption. You can share yours in a second. I am curious your thoughts. You know, we talk about coaching searches and timelines. You would think they'd like to get an AD in before they make a hire. What are your thoughts on the Houston situation and the idea that if they do wait for a new athletic director, it could be August, September, or later before they're able to make a potentially new hire for the Houston softball program?
It's been an interesting offseason for Houston, and it's far from over with everything that's been going on over there, and certainly the AD fire kind of came out of nowhere, blinded, although I've heard that there's some financial issues over there in Houston that I think played a role in this, where maybe they're not doing well revenue-wise. Maybe they're expecting X amount, and in reality, they're not getting that. That's what happens when you have a big buyout for Dana Hogerson and you fire him. That'd be my guess. But, you know, to your point about Kristen Vesely, of course, you're mentioning the contracts details were released by their, you know, one of the Houston media people there. That's not good. It's not good. I mean, you know, let's put to aside the allegations, I guess, that was addressed on the Houston podcast that you're talking about. They've not had a winning season since, I believe, 2019, 2020 range. Your contract comes up in a month and you're going to have a new boss who didn't hire you. Like, normally, when an AD comes in, they want their people in. And now you're almost giving them a freebie here where you're going to let them in. So let's say you're right. Let's say they do decide to make a move on that. You're right. It is unique in that they may not have a softball coach in place till the fall. However, that is not as abnormal as you would think in softball. Ironically, Gerry Glasco was hired in Louisiana in November of 2017 because there was a scandal with Mike Lateef, who was the then head coach of Louisiana, and he was fired with cause back in like November. Like, it was an investigation that was going on in Louisiana, things like that. Took all the way till November, got removed. They had to do a search, and they brought Gerry Glasco, who ironically at that time had just accepted a job as an assistant at Auburn to work for Mickey Dean, which lasted like literally weeks. So while it is not ideal and it's not and it's not, you know, your best case scenario, it is not unusual that you may have to have a coaching hire in softball in the fall. And I think the one thing that Houston has going for them is they're in the Big 12. So that in itself is an attractive job from a conference standpoint, from a region standpoint. There's a lot going for them. So even if if that job opens and it's available in the fall, I still think they can attract a name or two that you might be surprised that would be willing to bolt in the fall. It may not be a sitting head coach. Like, for example, I think Gerry Glasco would have been interested in Houston if it was open now. But you're too late. So you missed out on that. So you may not get that type. But I could see you getting an assistant from a power conference or something like that to jump to Houston as well. In the fall, because it is an attractive enough job where you'll be willing to make that jump.
Keep an eye on that as we get closer to that July 31st date. Last thing I want to talk to you about, obviously, assistant coach hirings being made around the country. A couple in the Big 12 caught my eye. Noah Sanders coming over to UCF. They lost 2 assistants to a couple of other gigs. And Oklahoma State hiring their new 3rd assistant in Greg Bergeron. What's interesting about both of these 2 individuals is Sanders at UCF comes over after being an assistant and associate head coach for the Little Rock baseball team. He spent most of his coaching career in college baseball. Bergeron, similarly, coming in, he spent the last 3 years at Cal State Northridge in softball, but most of his background, his coaching background, more than a decade of it, was spent coaching in baseball, a lot of it on the West Coast. It seems like, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like there's a slight trend to kind of bring in some guys who have baseball experience to your coaching staffs. Obviously, Kenny Gajewski, head coach at Oklahoma State, was an assistant in softball, but played baseball, coached in and around baseball, and so he had that background as well. Is this a trend you're seeing, and what do you feel like is leading to this trend of seeing more people with backgrounds in coaches in background baseball coming into the softball side?
It is a trend. And I tweeted about that, which got a lot of I got a lot of text messages on Friday when I tweeted about that, because some of the coaches, female coaches, hit me up and like, what are you talking about? What, females can't coach? And that nobody is saying that. But trends are trends. If you look at Oklahoma City this past year, Texas, Steve Singleton, baseball guy. I remember when Mike White hired Steve Singleton, people are like, what? What is he doing hiring this baseball guy who's like coaching, playing baseball in the low minors, and it was coaching in lower level baseball, whatever. Like, there's no softball back. Well, Texas, a few years later now, has the #1 offense, and Steve Singleton's probably one of the hottest assistant coach names as far as perhaps being a future head coach. Oklahoma, JT Gasso, played baseball. Tim Walton won a national title at Oklahoma, played baseball. His assistant, Eric Thomas, played baseball. You mentioned Kenny Gajewski, baseball guy. There is something to the trend going with baseball guys. I think that's one of the reasons why Coach Paul Malone made the move that she did. She had Tyler Heil back in 2022 when they made it to the Supers. He had a baseball background. Now he coached softball in New Mexico, but I don't know what it is. I don't have a direct answer why it is, but I do think there's something about a hitting approach from a baseball standpoint offensively that seems to work in softball. If you notice, Phillip, there's more and more baseball-esque trends going on in softball, the way the game's being played, going by staffs, for example. Now, softball teams more and more have to compete against pitching staffs. You know who's accustomed to doing that? Baseball. That's what they're used to. So that's, I think, part of it. I think part of it as well is the approach of a hitter there. There's not as much slapping in the game now as there was back in the day. So I do think it's a trend, and they're having success. I just gave you a handful of examples at the World Series. It seems like if you've got a baseball person, odds are in your favor that you're going to be successful offensively. And that's not, I'm not saying that means you have to hire a baseball person every time, but that is a trend that is going on in softball. And listen, the numbers back that up more and more each year.
Interesting trend. Again, something we'll keep an eye on. Eric, it's always a pleasure, man. Always enjoy having you here on the show to talk softball as our go-to. Do me a favor. Plug away. Where can everybody follow all the work you do with softball and UCF?
Eric Lopez Elo on social media, on Twitter, and all the social media places you like to check out. In the Circle SB Twitter, we're on fire. We're a top 10 on Good Pods for the month of June, so we're doing great there, and got some great guests coming up with some of the new head coaches at new places. We'll talk more about we talked about the Gerry Glasco hire at Texas Tech. Obviously, there's more softball. It ain't slowing down, fella. I don't, it used to be I could take some time off. Nowadays, with transfer portal moves and player transfers and coaching hires, there is no such thing. So you want to keep it on In the Circle. We'll keep track with you there, as well as on D1Softball.com, because that's where we got the best newsbreaker in the business in Justin McLeod, who finds ways to break news of what's going on around softball, as well as the transfer tracker that we have as well. So we got it all covered for you, but those are the places to find me.
Yeah, transfer portal, man. Softball, it's hopping. It's wild. Players in and out all over the place.
And I'm co-hosting Around the Kingdom on the Sons of UCF Network with Trace Trelko. I got to plug that in there for our family there, your family members there in the Sons of UCF Network there with Adam Eaton and company.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. We love the Sons of UCF over there. All right, Eric, it's a pleasure as always. We'll talk to you again soon.
Talk to you soon, Phil. Thanks.
Sports Social Podcast Network.